I stood there, breath caught in my chest, as the room silenced around me. The wine glass in my hand trembled slightly, catching the soft candlelight and throwing fractured shadows across the linen tablecloth. Across the table, my sister's smile was razor thin, and her words had landed like a slap. "You judge other people's families, Caroline, because you don't have one of your own." There it was, the humiliation, the sting. The truth twisted just enough to wound. Rachel, now Rebecca, had always known where to cut deepest, but before I could even respond, it was her fiancé, Malcolm, who pushed his chair back, the scrape of it loud and shocking in the hush. He turned not to Rebecca, but to me. "You're the judge tonight," he said evenly, looking straight at me. "So tell them what happened 5 years ago." My heart stuttered, my stomach twisted. Every memory I had buried under years of silence clawed its way back into the light. I could feel my mother's eyes on me, confused, my father's fingers tightening around his napkin. And Rebecca, her face had gone ashen. Malcolm knew. Somehow, he knew, and as the silence closed in, as the weight of decades of favoritism, cruelty, and manipulation filled every corner of that dining room, I realized this was it. The moment I had never dared imagine. The chance to finally speak the truth. Not the version dressed up in pretty bows for family peace, but the raw, fractured, brutal truth that had shaped my life and broken part of me forever. My voice was calm, too calm for the emotion boiling inside me. 5 years ago, I began. Rebecca called me at 3 a.m. She was at a motel off Highway 19. Her voice was slurred. She begged me not to tell Mom and Dad. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father opened his mouth to speak but thought better of it. When I arrived, she was battered, her face bruised, her hands shaking, and there, in the corner of the room, was a little girl, 2 years old, barefoot, frightened, and alone. The air in the room grew thin. I saw my cousin lower her fork. My Aunt Gloria closed her eyes. She was Rebecca's daughter. No one knew, not even me. Her name was Lily, and still, no one spoke, no one interrupted, because they knew, on some level, they had always known that something was being hidden. Some terrible family fissure glossed over with holiday smiles and selective memory. I took them to the hospital. Rebecca was high. Lily was malnourished. She had an ear infection and a fever. CPS got involved immediately. They were going to place Lily in foster care, and I couldn't let that happen. My hand tightened around the stem of the glass as I steadied my voice. I took her home. I became her guardian. Her bedtime, her nightmares, her therapy sessions, her laughter. They were all mine. I loved her with everything I had. Across from me, Rebecca looked like she'd been punched. "You gave her up," she said, her voice brittle, cracking. "I gave her back to you," I corrected. "After you came out of rehab, after you promised you'd changed, after you told me James, your new boyfriend, was ready to help you raise her, I let you take her, because I believed you." Rebecca's face was unreadable, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the table. "What none of you know," I continued, "is that 2 months after I gave Lily back, I was hospitalized. Emergency surgery, a ruptured appendix, massive infection. I survived, but I was left infertile. I'll never have children, and I never told you, because I didn't want pity, because I wanted peace." The table stayed silent, stunned. "But that peace," I said quietly, "was bought with my silence, with your jokes, Rebecca, with your constant, deliberate humiliation. Even after you knew, especially after you knew." I turned to Malcolm, whose eyes hadn't left mine. "You found something, didn't you?" He nodded. "Court records, foster care files. After she left you, Caroline, she abandoned Lily again. Left her with James when they broke up. He called social services. Lily went into the system. The final blow landed. My parents gasped. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. I had believed Lily was safe, and all this time, she was alone again. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me, each face at that table blurring into the next. Family, yes, but suddenly strangers. My niece had been in foster care, shuffled between strangers while I sat behind a judge's bench every day, deciding what the best interest of the child looked like for others. The irony cut so deep I thought I might bleed. Rebecca stood abruptly, her chair crashing to the floor behind her. "You had no right to bring this up here. You had no right to expose me." Malcolm remained seated, composed. "You exposed yourself the moment you mocked your sister, knowing full well what she sacrificed." "I didn't ask her to do any of it," Rebecca snapped, her voice cracking. She made that choice. She always made herself the martyr. My mother tried to interject. Girls? Please. No, I interrupted, standing too. My voice was low, but it carried. This isn't about what I chose. This is about what you did. You abandoned Lily. Again, and let her vanish into the system. You stole the one person I ever considered my family and then discarded her like trash. Rebecca's eyes were wild. I was struggling. I had no support. James said he'd take care of her. He had money, a big house. He said he'd handle it. And you believed him? Or did you just find it convenient to walk away again? I asked. You didn't even call me. I was ashamed. She shouted. Okay, is that what you want to hear? I knew I messed up and I didn't want to admit it. You always wanted to make me the villain. I laughed then. Not because it was funny, but because I finally saw it clearly. You made yourself the villain. I spent 5 years carrying the weight of your secrets, of your daughter's trauma, of your choices, and now you want to blame me for telling the truth. Rebecca's lip trembled, but she said nothing. My mother looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. My father, he didn't look at me. Not once. Malcolm's voice broke the silence. I tried, Rebecca. I tried to believe in you, but when I found out about Lily, and you kept lying, I couldn't. So what now? Rebecca asked bitterly. You dump me. Marry her instead. The good sister, the perfect judge. No one is perfect, he said, eyes hard. But she's honest. And she doesn't hide behind excuses when a child is hurting. That was the final fracture. Rebecca let out a choked sob, grabbed her coat, and stormed from the house, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the chandelier. Silence fell again. And then my mother turned to me. How could you do this to your sister? You humiliated her in front of everyone. Something inside me shattered. Not because of the words, but because I'd expected them. I had hoped, for one fragile moment, that this time might be different. That maybe, just maybe, they'd see me. You still don't get it, I said. I didn't do this to her. She did it to herself. I'm the one who stayed quiet. For years. For peace. But Lily is out there, and she needs someone to fight for her. I won't be silent anymore. My father finally spoke, his voice cold. You've torn this family apart. No, I replied, steady now. The rot was always here. I just turned on the lights. I didn't wait for another word. I left my wine untouched, my coat forgotten. I walked out into the cold night air, my hands shaking and my heart thudding, but something deeper inside me had gone still. For the first time in years, I felt clear. I went home and didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and filed an emergency inquiry with Child Protective Services. With my background, my experience, my history with Lily, I had grounds. I would find her, and if the courts would allow it, I would bring her home. Rebecca had abandoned her again, but this time, I would not. 2 days later, the caseworker called. Her voice was brisk but not unkind. Lily Morgan. Yes. We've located her. She's currently placed with a foster mother in Fairview named Eleanor Reed. She specializes in cases involving children with attachment trauma. I felt my knees weaken and reached for the counter to steady myself. Is she safe? There was a pause. Yes, she's safe, but she's been moved multiple times in the past 3 years. 4 placements before this one. She's had some difficulties adjusting, which is expected given her history. But Mrs. Reed reports gradual progress. Progress. The word felt like both hope and indictment. Progress that should have been happening in my care. In a home she already trusted. Can I see her? I asked, my voice quieter now. I was her temporary guardian once. I raised her for nearly a year. She called me Aunt Carrie. I see, the woman said, her tone shifting. That's significant. If you're considering a custody petition, we'll need to verify your prior involvement. Do you have legal documentation of that initial guardianship? I do, I replied immediately, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get her back. The caseworker took my information and promised to be in touch. When I hung up, my hands were trembling. I had judged hundreds of parents in courtrooms for less than what my sister had done. And now I had to stand before that same system, not as a judge, but as a petitioner, a supplicant. It was humbling, terrifying, necessary. 3 days later, I found myself parked on a quiet street in front of a modest, white bungalow with toys scattered across the lawn. Eleanor Reed's home. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, heart pounding. Then I forced myself out and rang the bell. Eleanor was in her early 50s, silver-streaked hair tied back, her eyes sharp and discerning. She looked me over like someone who didn't trust easily, which made me like her immediately. You must be Carrie Morgan, she said. Come in. We have a bit of time before Lily gets home from school. Her living room was warm and filled with subtle signs of children. Books, puzzles, drawings. I noticed a sketch taped to the fridge, a house, a tree, and a figure holding a smaller figure's hand. The caption read, "Me and Aunt Jessie." The spelling was off, but the name hit me like a thunderclap. "She remembers me," I whispered. Eleanor nodded. "She mentions you sometimes. Not often, but with affection." The dinosaur song comes up. My throat tightened. That old bedtime song I used to sing. How had she held onto that thread through so much chaos? "She's cautious," Eleanor added. "Brilliant, sweet when she feels safe. But she doesn't trust easily. She's had more instability than any child should. And when she begins to feel connection, she tests it. Hard. I want to be tested," I said. "I want her to push me and scream and cry and throw everything she has at me. Because I will not leave again." Eleanor studied me for a long time, then slowly nodded. "All right. When she gets home, I'll introduce you as someone who knew her when she was younger. We'll keep it simple for now. No pressure. Let's just see what happens." At 3:47, the school bus pulled up. And then, she was there. Taller, of course, her hair darker. Her face more serious than any 7-year-old should be. But those eyes, God, those eyes, still wide, still searching. She stepped into the house, dropped her backpack, and saw me. Her posture stiffened immediately. "Lily," Eleanor said gently. "This is Miss Carey. Do you remember her?" Lily tilted her head, skeptical, studying me the way only a child who's been lied to too many times can. Then she squinted. "You sang the dinosaur song." My heart cracked wide open. "I did," I said, crouching to her level, about the little dinosaur who was afraid of the dark, and how his mom gave him a nightlight made of stars. Lily didn't speak, but she didn't run either. She just stood there, watching me. Then, after a long beat, she whispered, "I thought you were gone." I blinked back the tears. "I never wanted to leave you. I tried to stay. But now I'm here." She looked down, then slowly, almost imperceptibly, took one step closer. That one step shattered every wall I'd spent years building around my heart. My instinct was to reach for her, pull her into my arms, feel the weight of her again. But I didn't. I'd learned enough in my courtroom, and in my own regrets, to know that trust doesn't return on demand. It waits, watches, tests. Lily looked up at Eleanor. "Can she stay for dinner?" Eleanor smiled. "If she wants to, and if you're okay with that." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'd love to." Dinner was spaghetti and garlic bread. Simple, warm, comfort food. Lily ate slowly, silently, occasionally glancing in my direction. Her eyes still held that cautious distance, the kind that asks, "Will you leave again?" I didn't force conversation. I didn't try to entertain. I just stayed. Every now and then, I asked about school or her favorite book. Her answers were brief, but she didn't withdraw. That, Eleanor would later tell me, was progress. After dessert, Lily stood, walked across the room, and picked up a tattered stuffed animal from the couch, a faded purple bunny. "Do you remember this?" she asked, holding it toward me. I gasped softly. "Mr. Hops." Her lips curled just slightly at the corners. "You gave him to me." "I did," I said, my voice cracking. "After your second nightmare, you said you wanted a guard bunny to watch the door." She looked down at the toy, then back at me. "He still watches." A fragile silence stretched between us, sacred and terrifying. Then Lily said quietly, "Can you come back tomorrow?" I looked to Eleanor for permission. She nodded gently. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion pressing at my ribs. "Yes, I'll be here." Over the next 2 weeks, I returned every afternoon. I helped with homework, sat beside her during snack time, read bedtime stories when Eleanor allowed me to stay late. Bit by bit, Lily unfurled. It wasn't linear. There were setbacks. One day she screamed at me for no reason and refused to speak for hours. The next, she slipped her hand into mine without a word. She was testing the edges, searching for the drop-off where people disappear. But I didn't. Not this time. Eleanor began leaving us alone in the kitchen while she folded laundry or took calls in the other room. Lily grew bolder, telling me about her favorite teacher, about the nightmare she'd had the night before, about a girl at school who made fun of her worn shoes. I took notes. Mental lists of what she liked, what she needed, what I could give, and I started preparing for the next step, filing for custody. Malcolm helped. After the engagement dinner fallout, he'd moved out of Rebecca's apartment and reached out to me, first tentatively, then with steady purpose. He wasn't chasing forgiveness. He didn't need me to fix him. He just wanted to help me fight for Lily. Do you want to be her guardian again or her parent? He asked during one of our legal prep sessions. I want to be whatever the law lets me be, I replied. But if it were up to my heart, I'd be her mother. He looked at me for a long time before saying, then let's make sure you are. Rebecca, predictably, did not go quietly. When she was served notice of the petition, she exploded, called me every name in the book, accused me of betrayal, of jealousy, of stealing her daughter. You always wanted to be me, she said through a venomous voicemail. Well, congrats. Now you can have the kid too. But when she learned that I was also asking the court to investigate the misuse of child support funds, money she'd accepted for years even after abandoning Lily, her rage became desperation. She showed up at my apartment, screaming in the hallway. Neighbors watched from cracked doors as I stood calm and firm. Go home, Rebecca, I said. You've already lost her once. If you keep fighting this way, you'll lose any chance of seeing her again. She spat something I didn't catch and stormed off. It was the last time I saw her before court. The day of the hearing, I sat on the petitioner's side of the courtroom, not the bench. I wore a simple black dress, no robes, no titles. Just me, a woman trying to reclaim the only child who had ever called her Aunt Jessie. Lily wasn't in the room. Of course, the system protects children from having to witness these kinds of battles, but her guardian ad litem sat beside me, prepared to advocate for her needs. When the judge entered, I rose on instinct. I'd stood for hundreds of judges, but never one holding my fate so directly in their hands. My attorney presented our case, my history of guardianship, my career, my home stability, my consistent presence over the past months, Eleanor testified, her words steady and sure. Lily has begun to rebuild trust, she said, and the person she trusts is Mrs. Morgan. Rebecca was called next. She sobbed on the stand, tried to paint herself as a mother wronged by a sister's interference. But the court had the records, evidence of neglect, abandonment, financial misuse. It was too late. And deep down, I think even she knew that. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I stood and stepped forward, my hands folded to keep them from trembling. The courtroom felt cavernous. Every rustle, every breath amplified in that silence. I had spoken so many times in court before. Lectures, rulings, cross-examinations, but never like this. Never for something that mattered so personally. I loved Lily the moment I saw her. I began, my voice soft but unwavering, not out of obligation, not because she was my niece, but because she needed someone, and I needed her too. She gave my life direction when it had only been about ambition. For nearly a year, I was the one who got her dressed for preschool, who held her through nightmares, who made her pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. I paused, searching the judge's expression for any sign of reception. She was still, but not unkind. I gave her back to her mother because I believed people could change, and because the law told me it was the right thing to do. But the law doesn't feel what I felt when Lily clung to me and begged me not to go, and it didn't see what happened after. I didn't know she'd be abandoned again. I didn't know she'd be passed from home to home, but I know now. And I'm here, not as a judge, not as someone perfect, just as someone who loves her and won't walk away again. Silence held for a moment after I finished. Then the judge nodded slowly. Thank you. Ms. Morgan, she said. We'll take a recess before issuing a ruling. I sat back down, exhaling the breath I'd been holding for years. Rebecca wouldn't even look at me. I thought of Lily in that moment. Her tiny hand pressed into mine, her cautious smile, the way she asked every night if I'd still be there in the morning. And I knew, win or lose, I had done what I needed to do. I had shown up. When we returned to the courtroom, the judge was direct. This court's duty is to consider the child's best interests, not the comfort or regret of the adults involved. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of instability, neglect, and abandonment on the part of Ms. Caldwell. Rebecca flinched at the use of her last name. By contrast, the judge continued, Mrs. Morgan has demonstrated both historical and recent commitment to Lily's well-being, including consistent contact, emotional investment, and the ability to provide a stable, nurturing home. I felt my heart begin to race. Therefore, this court grants full legal and physical custody of Lily Caldwell to Caroline Morgan, effective immediately. The words rang like a bell through my chest. And with regard to the financial misconduct surrounding child support funds, the judge added, the court orders an investigation and the establishment of a trust for Lily, comprised of any funds misappropriated by Mrs. Caldwell. Rebecca stood abruptly. You can't do this. She's my daughter. You had your chance, the judge replied flatly. You had years of chances. Rebecca's attorney placed a hand on her arm, urging her to sit. But she yanked it away and stormed from the courtroom without another word. I didn't move. Not at first. Not until the gavel fell, and the moment settled around me like a quiet sunrise after a storm. Marcus was in the gallery, smiling. Not a triumphant grin, but something warmer, steady. He stood and crossed to me as the room emptied, resting a hand on my shoulder. You did it, he said softly. No, I whispered. We did it. All of us who didn't give up on her. He nodded. What now? Now. The word pulsed through me with meaning. Now I go home, I said, and tell my daughter that she finally has a home that no one can take away. When I picked Lily up from school that afternoon, she ran to me, not hesitantly, not with caution, but with arms wide, her backpack bouncing behind her. You're here, she breathed. I knelt, holding her tightly, and I always will be. That night, as we lay under the covers reading a picture book about stars and fireflies, she reached for my hand. Can I still call you Aunt Carrie? She asked. Always, I smiled. But if you ever want to call me Mom, that's okay too. She didn't respond right away, just snuggled closer, and after a long pause, I heard her whisper against my arm. Okay, Mom. Thank you for watching this story on Vengeance Within. If you believe that standing for truth sometimes means standing alone, but it's still worth it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more true, powerful stories about justice, family, and finding the strength to speak when silence no longer protects.